Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this governance committee meeting. I'm sorry we're running just a few minutes behind today. We'll start with roll call. Councilor Tabor?
Here.
Councilor Lombardi?
Here.
I'm Councilor Cook, and I am here, and Assistant Mayor Kelly could not be with us today. Did everyone have a chance to review the minutes from the March 10th, 2025 meeting?
Yes.
Yes. I move we approve them.
Right. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Are there any changes? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. The minutes from March 10th, 2025 are approved. I'm going to share my screen so that those who are watching at home will know what our agenda looks like for today. So the first item on our agenda is to discuss a report back on IT integration. And we're going to start that discussion with IT and an HR report back on coordination with the charter departments. I'm going to turn it over to our Deputy City Manager.
Thank you, Councilor. So just to kind of tee this up a little bit, in February, the Governance Committee was reviewing proposed changes to Chapter 1, Section 1.106. And that part of the city's Chapter 1 deals with the administrative code and describes the organization. And in our effort to update that language in Chapter 1, a conversation ensued with regard to IT and HR in particular, although we're going to have some conversation about where we see things going with our new financial software, which will be rolling out. And so we thought this is a good opportunity to bring this committee up to speed on a bunch of efforts and to answer some of the questions we had about the city charter and about IT and HR in particular. So with that, I think this is kind of keeping focused on the short-term goal, which is to update Chapter 1, recognizing that this is more about evolution and kind of opening the doors and the conversations about how we'd like to see the organization evolve and to take advantage of technologies and other changes that have come our way and will continue to come our way. So,
Thank you.
with that, I know Ryan is prepared. Ryan, our Chief Information Officer, is prepared to kind of walk through his information on IT.
Sounds great. Can we invite you up to talk with us?
Thank you. Good morning, committee members. The committee requested data, which we have worked together to prepare for you today, between the city's IT department, the school, and the police department's IT staff. And in your packet, you'll find a comprehensive list of software used at the city. We did our best to identify all software, focused mostly on stuff we're actually paying for. And then, secondly, a list of the city IT staff and their duties. And so we tried to identify, primary duties and who performs those duties. And obviously, there's a lot of things to look at there. Just a few comments regarding software. There's a lot of different software at the different units that provide, specific functions that they need to do tasks that are unique to the departments. And because of those, the uniqueness of it, there seemingly at surface is not a lot of overlap in terms of software. You may find some that appear to be overlaps, like where each organization is using Office 365 or an Entra for identity. But there's reasons to manage those separately, and there probably isn't any cost savings from integrating them. It would be a huge project, but also we use different licensing because we're on what's called commercial 365 at the city. The PD is using the government version, and the school has an education version. And so the school gets discounts being education version, and the PD has requirements being on the government version that are separate from the city. So it'd be very expensive to try to integrate all three. And there are probably opportunities to save on software, but we would need to do additional study and look at where the overlaps are. Just an example that might come to mind is like everyone needs a PDF editing software, something like Adobe, Acrobat. And so we could work with vendors in the future to say, okay, we've got all these licenses, can we bundle them together versus, the city and the PD and the school, but buying them separately. But that would also cause different challenges. It would probably be best handled through like a sales type agreement, but we might not integrate them technologically because of the different identity providers we use. And then as far as staff responsibilities, I wouldn't anticipate integration to reduce the volume of work required. That, we have the number of positions we do that are, required to do the work that's needed, and everyone has a full workload. And there's also different skills required in the different departments. So, for example, the school uses Google Work to do different office tasks, whereas generally in the city we're using Microsoft Office products. And so to support those different, we wouldn't see an immediate, crossover between the support of those products because they're so different. But there could be benefits in cross-training over time, and as workloads allowed to allow the different departments to support each other. And on large projects, there could be benefits to working together to bring in expertise in certain areas. And then collaboration could lead to improved outcomes and knowledge sharing. And then some beyond the dollar benefits that I believe could be achieved, sort of leadership, strategy, oversight, and accountability to be achieved across the departments would be advantages. An IT strategic plan that the city IT department has worked on could be comprehensive and citywide, and specialized staff in areas like cybersecurity that could serve all IT units, and then stronger incident response. We had issues, they could be handled by a larger team, and we could provide a larger response. And then additional knowledge sharing, training, and technical mentoring could be a benefit.
Does anyone have questions? Yes. Councilor Tabor.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. I was looking at the matrix that you gave us with all of the different programs of work in each of the different departments. Long story short, I was wondering, looking at our 8 people in City Hall IT and our 8 people in the schools, I agree with you. You could see from the software list there's very different application software for education than there are for running a sewer plant. But I wondered, in terms of project management, technical design, and vendor management, could we fold the high level? Do you think that a single IT department could provide those services for the charter departments, assuming we have experts who are trained in project management, assuming that we have folks who understand software integration and design and things like that?
And so we're talking about the positions, not the software, the people?
I'm not sure. Let's lay aside the idea of people going away. As you say, there's plenty of work for everybody. But wouldn't it make sense to centralize vendor management, project management, technical design, so that, in other words, would you have generalists with the skills who could provide those functions for the charter departments.
I think generalists in IT is a really hard concept because things can be so specific. So potentially, yes, and it would probably be project by project, and it would probably depend like networking potentially was an area where as long as you know the ins and outs of that particular network, networking doesn't change so much from place to place. And technical design could fall into that category. Vendor management gets a little more difficult, I think, because of, the school department may take advantage of certain grants, and so they may be making choices differently than the city. As long as they knew about those stuff from a project management standpoint, they should be able to, achieve the same result. So I think if you have the right talented people, then yes. But it's very specific to the project.
I mean, when I was in charge of a company with 200 people, we had a lot of software. We had a single IT department and very different disciplines. But the key we found was having super users, people in each of the work areas who, over the years, were kind of the person everybody else would go to and say, how do you get the system to do this? For us, it was very efficient because when you had strong super users in each of the specific work areas, in our case, advertising, sales, or editorial composition, or circulation, then you could have generalists saying, okay, we need a new system. How do we manage that as a project? And work with the folks on the line who knew the software really well.
And I think in specific areas we have that, like, for example, in the finance software, there's people in the finance department who know the software really well. And then another example would be like open gov permitting and licensing, where we have identified power users, and we have a little bit of a consortium where we try to, bring in people from the departments to help answer each other's questions and things like that. So I think that we're doing those kind of things on the city side. I think where we run into a little trouble with that is just like what police department is doing is so different. So, and they may have those super users that know their software in and out on the PD side, but it doesn't directly translate into what somebody at the school department or the city is doing because we don't use the same software. So I just think over time we would have cross-pollination and benefits to that. It's just not probably in the short term, feasible that somebody can support all the software at all the different departments just because of the pure number of software that we're supporting.
Yeah, it was a lengthy list.
Are there other questions?
It struck me that there's this huge amount of software. I mean, it's, and this does not account for software that is installed on city computers that are, by an individual. And I don't know what the policy is about that. I mean, is there a strict policy? You can't install software on...
Yeah. At the city, the users don't have administrative privileges to install software, so they have to request that software is installed.
Okay.
And so primarily it's, our two support services, people who would, handle doing that if somebody requested it, and it has to be approved, generally by me.
Yeah. For example, I get an email from somebody that says he sent me something in Dropbox. Now, I've never trusted Dropbox myself, and so I won't install that. But that comes on the iPad, and I don't, seems like the iPads are fairly open to putting things on, but
we manage iPads differently for the council than we do, and the boards than we do for city employees. So it's a lot stricter on the employee side,
Yeah.
where they have to request software to be installed. But
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure on the board side, because we're using a specific application to deliver the board packages, it's a little bit different.
Yeah. I just told him I can't install that myself. I didn't
Okay.
want to install it anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, we do have things in place to prevent people from installing software that's not approved.
Okay, good.
So I have a question on cybersecurity, because you highlighted that as an area where we think that some integration might be helpful. Where do you see us really benefiting in that realm? I know we've done a lot to improve cybersecurity on the city side, and I'm not sure what has been done at the schools or in the police department, so.
I think aligning on policy, a lot of the policies could probably carry over from between the different departments. So we could align on policy, and I think that there's certain tools we're using at the city that if they're not duplicated at school and PD, they could benefit from getting on board with vulnerability scanning and management, and being able to find software vulnerabilities and have it automated, and plan for remediation is really beneficial. I know on the city side, when we started a vulnerability management program, we had a lot of vulnerabilities, like it was thousands. And so it's kind of like whack-a-mole. You fix 10 and then 2 more pop up, that kind of thing. So you never really get to full remediation of all vulnerabilities. But that's an area where it's working really well for us, and I think a similar program across all departments would make sense. And then you see the cost savings because your total purchase goes up, so you're going to spend more money, but you're getting more bang for your buck, as opposed to if you implemented it 3 times. And then same thing with policies. Instead of having policies misaligned between the departments, if you had one high level of policy that covered everybody, then you don't run into issues where one group's doing one thing and one other group's doing another, and they might not match up.
Can I follow on? I have a questions about specifically the schools. I can see how cybersecurity could be extremely challenging with the number of users who are underage. Is there a vision for how we could help address some of that and provide, I guess, more security for the school side? Because it's really challenging when you've got all those users that are getting phishing requests.
I don't have specific insight into the school department and what they're doing to address cybersecurity, and I think it also leads into different questions, like if you're trying to protect student data, like from hackers or whatever, that would be a different issue than if you're trying to say, like, no, we want to protect the children from the dangers of the internet or something. So there's different angles to kind of look at it from. So it would require, some really good thought and analysis to figure out what the best approach is.
Okay.
I will say there are representatives from the school here if you're interested, Counselor.
Maybe, because I think this is probably one of the most challenging things that the school deals with on the IT side is cybersecurity, and I would think between that and any incident that they might experience. So we'd kind of love to hear from them if there's any, someone wants to.
Yeah.
Just identify themselves for the record.
Oh, yes.
Zach McLaughlin, Superintendent of Schools.
And I'm Tom Lotz. I'm the IT manager for the schools.
Tom, maybe we can talk about this from 2 different perspectives. I think one is the kind of our approaches to specifically student data, And then maybe the second one would be, around kind of system security, ransomware, kind of that approach. So can you kind of
Right.
hit each of those?
So a couple of different things. One is for student data. We first of all run secure systems, run all the best policies and multi-factor authentication and such like that. Obviously, one of our primary concerns is our student information system, because that has most of the data that would be accessible there. So we protect that. We actually run that in a hybrid environment with the vendor, but we also have a data governance plan that we use to protect our students from also voluntarily putting too much information on the web. So every digital tool, I will call it, okay, because there's so many different kinds of applications and cloud-based software and all that sort of thing. So I kind of lump it together into what I call digital tools. But every digital tool that we use for the school, anything new that comes in, has to go through a vetting process. And we work with a consortium to actually go through and look at each one of those, make sure that the tools meet the data privacy standards. Our consortium actually it reaches out to every vendor. They cover the entire New England area, but they reach out to every vendor and basically try and have them all sign a data privacy agreement, essentially, so that they will say that they will absolutely protect our data, and here's how, and this is the type of information that they collect and not collect and all that. So we do that for everything that comes in. That's actually a statutory requirement under, I think it's RSA 89, I think. I don't remember the number offhand, but anyway.
But it is statutory.
It is statutory that we have to do that for students. So that's kind of an extra layer that we have to do for students that you might not have to do for, obviously, adult employees and things like that. As far
I'll
as...
just say one other thing quickly, just
yes,
so we
go
do, that's also under our school board policy. So the RSA creates an impetus for the school board to have a policy around this stuff, and on an annual basis, Tom and his team comes back to the board with updates to that particular plan. So, sorry.
Yep. Another thing that we touched on briefly here that I think is a little bit different is that, yes, we have to filter a lot of what our students see coming in as well to meet the SIPA requirements. And so our web filtering that we use, we have actually two different filters that we use to, catch most of this stuff. It's technology; it won't catch everything, but it filters out most of the bad stuff that comes in. So that's another requirement that we obviously are a little bit more careful about than some other departments. And then as far as cybersecurity in general is concerned, and protecting our data, so we implement our policies and procedures. Those are always in need of update and such. We have our own protections that are, in this case, yes, I would agree, are similar to what you're going to see at the city or the PD as far as like the general umbrella policy, and then we drill down a little bit further. So, I wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit of overlap in that area. We obviously, run antivirus, anti-malware, all those sorts of tools as well. So I think I caught everything.
I was just going to say quickly about the consortium. I think about Councilor Lombardi talking about Dropbox. We have individual staff who want to put have things, lots of different things they would like to have access to, and at times there's the internal rub of people being really frustrated with, no, that has not gone through the consortium, that they can't demonstrate yet that they've hit these standards in terms of data security, and that's an ongoing conversation with staff who are our kind of our foot forward kind of digital folks. Sometimes we're saying, hey, we need to reel it in, and these are the expectations around security.
Right. Oh, and actually, if I can add one more thing, and that is for our student information database. We actually have a database administrator, an assistant database administrator, whose job is to make sure that that data is secure, to make sure that they set the permissions for each individual user who's on that system to, least access and all that sort of thing, so that, and to update the rules for the information that needs to come in and be reported out ultimately. So that's what their focus is.
I guess my only follow-on is, one of the biggest vulnerabilities in security is in email and people taking the bait on some kind of phishing effort. What do you find? Like, do you find that you struggle at all with security with students who maybe aren't as savvy or around? I know that the young people really understand technology in ways that some of us who are older don't, but they maybe don't get the same training, I think, that employees do. So do you ever find challenges around that?
I would say what keeps me up at night is staff, not students. And so, and I'll let Tom speak to that some more, but I would say that, there's a lot of work that gets done around ongoing training, specifically around email phishing stuff, where, we use a program, CyberHoot, that pushes out, quick videos about ways in which you can get sucked into these types of things. People have to, do quizzes and demonstrate that they have at least X amount of knowledge as a result of that. Then there was a move over the last 18 months, which I liked. It was out of video and into giving people examples of emails and then asking all staff to be able to say, well, here are these 8 different components that are inside of this email. Does this component look safe to you or not? So so you had to specifically really kind of be good at diagnosing, and if you couldn't figure it out, you get kicked back to do it again. And so for a lot of our concern tends to be with staff who are not digital natives, where kids tend to be a bit more savvy on some of the stuff. That doesn't mean that they're not going to get caught in things, but I like I said, what keeps me up at night in terms of security is really more around staff than it is around students.
Yep. I would concur on that as far as vulnerabilities to attacks. The other thing that we do with the students is primarily we have them on Chromebooks, which are a lot less susceptible to malware. And that helps, I think. Obviously they can still click on something, and it probably wouldn't be a bad idea for us to expand some of our training to the students as well. But what they get right now is more in a few classes that they have, as opposed to something dedicated.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.
While there's, if I could just ask a few questions. It was fascinating to see all the software that you guys use, and it looked to me like there's student records, and that's one whole piece of software. That's a big database. Mm-hmm. And then there's individual teaching tools, like software to teach kids architecture, or software to teach kids how to develop apps, and really neat online learning tools. And then there's scheduling and communication to parents and all of that. And then there's the Chromebooks. Are teachers able to have back and forth with students on Chromebooks? I mean, can a student submit something and a teacher graded and, or write back and say, you know, you can make this stronger if you do this? And is that within our capability?
It is actually. So that's actually handled all within the Google Workspace for Education suite. One part of that we use is Google Classroom, which is a powerful tool that allows the teacher to basically have a list of assignments, you know, say here's when it's due, blah, 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 here are the instructions. The students can, you know, generate their, you know, type up whatever their response is, submit it through Google Classroom. The teacher can mark it up, send it back, say here are my suggestions, resubmit it, and they can go back and forth that way. You know, obviously they can email each other back and forth as well for other types of communications and those sorts of things. But yeah, Google Classroom is really the key piece to that.
And what was interesting is I think as a result, and I think this is everywhere, not just here, COVID accelerated you know, who was utilizing these tools, where we would have had, you know, kind of it was the coalition of the willing pre-COVID about who were the folks who saw themselves as kind of technology-forward teachers. And COVID forced it to become, you know, pretty ubiquitous in terms of the utilization of the Google Suite and those types of things. And now it'd be pretty, you know, I think reasonably rare for people to be passing paper back and forth. You know, when you're turning in your paper or doing those, you know, your paper, you know, those types of things. So.
And does Google Classroom run needing a lot of support or not a lot of support? I mean, I don't know how you would support 800 high school kids.
So most of what we do from the IT department to support Google Classroom is the pre-population of all the information and the synchronizing between different systems. So, you know, in order for a student to be in a classroom, they first have to be in our student information system, enrolled in a class and all that sort of thing. Then that has to be synced up with Google Classroom, and then Google Classroom, they can run their class and such, and then report back with grades to Infinite Campus, which is our student information
So that's
system.
integrated.
Yep. So that integration is key. So we handle that integration, but as far as actual classroom work and the teachers working with students and such, you know, obviously they're doing that all on their own.
And I would say this one thing we try to as we identify probably needs for us going forward. You know, there have been in the past, the district has had tech integrationists. So you have folks who are there to really sit down with teachers and talk about how do you take this tool and maximize it to really do what you want to do, and in the, you know, the overall kind of here's what you're trying to do as an educator. This is how this tool can help you. There's differing degrees of kind of people's, you know, we use the core functions of Google Classroom, but you can go layers and layers and layers deeper. And we have different folks who are using it to a different extent. So when we do talk about the longer term kind of needs for us, as we have these softwares, if we want to use them, you know, to their fullest, we need folks on the ground who have the ability to bridge those two worlds, the worlds of being a teacher and thoughtful about pedagogy, simultaneously are folks who understand the tools, and then can sit and really work with folks and do that stuff. These guys will do that, but not as a core function, and not really, you know, I don't expect Tom's guys are going to sit down and think about educational theory with a teacher about how to develop, how to execute this particular calculus concept. But they will make sure the tool's up and running and functional, and there are ways for folks to train themselves.
And last question, and with all of your student record keeping, there's a whole database. Can you query that database or download things? Like if you want to say, how many kids in math we have and what's the grade distribution, you know?
We can run reports on the database, yes, for various things. We actually do state reporting, so we have to submit a couple of times a year It's actually changing right now. They're updating the system at the state, but we have to submit at least 3 times a year is what it was, the beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of the year. But we submit a whole slew of data up to the state and parse it out different ways and all that sort of thing. And then we can run ad hoc queries and reports and whatnot on that. Depending upon how complex it is, I mean, that's how long it might take to write the query and come up with the right report. But yeah, we can access that data in various ways.
I would say one of the things is it's always this tug of war between man hours and the tools we're utilizing. So our student information system can produce some things, but I would say that our at the moment we're reliant on some of those people who are in those database positions to run anything beyond kind of simple queries. There are other systems out there that don't hold all the student information, but you then can pump some of that into it, and it'll do other analysis for you. So we don't have some of these tools, but we've had some conversations where, let's say, we have a team of teachers who are pulling different things to identify students who might be struggling. Well, we can run a bunch of separate queries through our current system. There are some platforms out there that we could pump the information into, and I would say, like, I want to see every kid who's missed more than 5 days of school in the last 2 months, who also have had at least one disciplinary infraction and are currently failing one class. Well, that's like, bang, here's my list. And now the team isn't spending their time sorting through data. The team has now already got that information, and now we're planning, what are we doing around these specific kids? So these are the types of things that, as we think about kind of our next step of what we want to do with some of those systems, those are some of those next steps.
Yeah, that's always the challenge, is what's the report writing capability and the big system that you have with the big database versus do you need to export it into something that gets you more analytical tools?
Well, is it user friendly enough where I can have an inquisitive teacher on the ground say, run those types of queries without getting into kind of low-level coding in order to pull it off. And we can do some of that, but not as much as I would like. I would like us to be able to do more of that in the future.
Thanks.
So I have one more question around incident response, because that was one of the areas that we identified as a potential area where some integration could be helpful. I know we weren't impacted by this fall, but there was a breach of a major school platform. I think it was Canva?
PowerSchool.
Oh, it's PowerSchool that was breached. Are we confident, I guess is a two-part question, that we have a large enough team that we could respond to that kind of incident, and that we have the firewalls we need between our student information system and Infinite Classroom that would protect us from losing data if we had that kind of incident?
I think, Brian.
Oh.
I think, unfortunately, I know there were some local communities that were affected by that. In certain aspects, if you go full cloud, you're at the whims of the provider. So you could be doing everything correctly, but if the provider gets compromised, we call it third-party compromise, until they fix things on their end, you're kind of dead in the water. Usually they're just shutting everything off until they can clean it out. And in that specific incident, I think that's what they were dealing with. And so you could have as many people as you want, and that's not going to help you, unfortunately. Sorry, but that just as you look at incidents, I think things that we see a lot is third-party business email compromise, where email accounts getting compromised, things like that. We see ransomware obviously is still happening, and that's a big problem. So anything that you house internally could be ransomwared. And I think incident response becomes big there, because if you're trying to recover from backups, are your backups good? Can you recover? And that's where being able to put a lot of people on a problem becomes, because you can start triaging things quickly. For instance, if you had ransomware and you have to re-image, hundreds of computers and to get people back to work, that is obviously a really big job.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's my fear, that we'll be caught up.
Oh, no, I mean, I think my answer would have been conservative, because I don't want to be on the front page of Seacoast saying we're 100% secure in all ways, because there are elements that we can control in-house, and as Ryan's saying, there's elements we can't. And I sat through the Nashua superintendent talking through their experience, and I'm glad I have not yet had an opportunity to live that experience, which is like our systems are down. We don't have the ability to do attendance. We don't have control over what's going on with report cards. They were just dead in the water. And so I think we take that threat really seriously. And we, I don't certainly hope we're never in that position that Nashua would found themselves in.
All right.
This is not just school, a general question. There's so many pieces of software here, and many software programs have their own storage. So I guess my question is, how many clouds are we in? How many different, server farms do we contract with in all this? And with that, are there redundancies in these cloud platforms?
I think it all depends on the product. There's some things which we're 100% cloud, and you're a little bit at the mercy of the software provider. They choose where they host. AWS is really popular, Amazon Web Services, or Azure. So you're really relying on them to do their due diligence. And the kind of other side of that coin, though, is if you go the other way and say, well, we're not willing to accept that risk, then you have to do it all in-house, and that's not really practical either. And so it all comes down to like risk acceptance. So choosing vendors that are doing the right things. There's certifications that they get that like SOC. That tell you whether they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Things also like FedRAMP and StateRAMP is really becoming big. And so looking for vendors that are FedRAMP and StateRAMP approved so that they're doing the correct things that they're supposed to be as far as their practices and how they're managing is really the vendor selection becomes key, is really the big part. We can't store it all internally.
Right, no, and I wouldn't want you to, but I just wonder how many different clouds are in.
It's a lot, yeah. I think the big thing is making sure that you identify, okay, what kind of information are we storing here? Is it protected at the correct level? Because you have to protect different levels of different types of information differently. And in government, like a lot of our data, it might be public, so we're not worried so much about access, but we don't want anyone to be able to change or delete or, and so it's not that the data is confidential, it's that we want to protect it for ourselves and so that we have access to it. So access becomes big. And so, if we had to, I don't know if we could even identify every cloud we're in because every vendor has a different.
I guess that's my question.
Yeah. It's a valid concern, but I'm not sure right now what we could do about it.
Thank you so much for sharing. Really, truly appreciate it because, as a person who doesn't do IT, it's helpful to hear, kind of what is happening, especially where everybody has vulnerabilities. So it's always challenging to hear how we're handling that. So thank you. I want to be mindful of the time, and are we going to hear back from HR as well?
HR is here.
Could you please? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kelly Harper. I'm the HR director, and I just wanted to echo all of the intelligent things that Ryan said in his opening statement. But I first wanted to take a moment to thank the committee for their work on the charter. just to ensure that it reflects current practices and helps us accomplish what's best interest of the city. So I thought we would go through the HR matrix quickly.
Okay.
If you want to bring that up.
I don't know if I have, do I have it up? Where do I have it?
It's in blue.
It's the last page.
Is it the last page?
Yes.
Okay. Look at all of it, but, aha, there it is.
There we go. Okay.
It was separate, but.
So just to be mindful that, HR is a support function for the city and the employees. And I look at the 4-person HR group as kind of the tree, and then there are branches off of the tree in each department that we work very closely with. Okay. So currently, for applicant tracking systems, the city uses Criterion. Criterion actually purchased our former ATS that was implemented in 2019, which was Civic HR. And at the time, the school and fire department piggybacked with us and used our ATS. The police department currently uses Police App. And the school a few years ago implemented Frontline. The reason why the school implemented Frontline and the police department have Police App is that it allows people looking for jobs in education or, to be a police officer. They can apply to numerous positions in different municipalities or districts at once. So you don't have to go in and keep reapplying. You can just kind of click a button and it will send your application out. For interviewing, on the school side, the principals or supervisors oversee the interviews, the reference checks, and then it goes through their hiring process. We touch every employee that's offered a position. So at one point there is a contact, but we are notified after the offer has been made for the school side. PD has their own process, obviously, due to the intensity of the background checks. And for fire, we actually sit in on the initial interviews, but are notified when an offer has been made. For background checks, the school goes through the fingerprinting process, which they need to by law. Police, again, manage their own. And fire does go through ours, which is done through a third party, and we do set up their pre-employment physicals and drug screenings. For benefit administration and onboarding, we hold orientation for all new hires. So part-time or full-time, they meet with someone in the department. We get them enrolled in benefits if they're eligible, get them the payroll documents they need to, get a check. Our benefit administration also handles all the leave management, so FMLA, long-term disability. We meet with the employees for ADA requirements. We handle tracking, documentation, and we also take care of the sick leave banks throughout the city and the school. Labor relations, so grievances, when they are first issued, go through the collective bargaining process. But if they are moved further along, we involve our labor attorney. So the city has one labor attorney who is a contractor. For policies, the charter departments work on their own policy to fit the needs of each department or state, federal laws. The school department actually has a policy committee. The fire commission approves certain fire policies. You will see in some of the collective bargaining agreements where it is mentioned that if language is missing, the members of the union will follow city policy. So that's where they would follow the municipal side. And where a fire department is quiet on policy, they would also follow the city's. We do have a policy management system. So actually the police department were the first to implement Power DMS, and they use it as their policy management system. The city also utilizes Power DMS now for our policy management, and the fire department utilizes the city's Power DMS system as well to hold all of their policies. In meeting with the school is very interested in implementing Power DMS on their side as well. So that's something that came from this meeting, is speaking with them about their policy management. So for risk management, workers' compensation, we share property and liability and workers' comp coverage through Primex. The HR department is responsible for reporting of property and liability claims, the files, and the follow-up on everyone except for the school department. We also manage all the necessary reports, like the annual schedule of exposures, and we do that for everyone but the school at this time. We do manage all the reporting for workers' compensation claims, the annual audit, et cetera. So that goes through the HR department for everyone, including the school. Negotiations, you three have met our labor attorney, Tom Clausen. So he has overseen all of our agreements for quite some time. HR does sit in on the school and city negotiations, but I have not been invited to the fire or police just yet. So we'll see if we can change that. Employee concerns, obviously we are an open door for all employees to come to. This area is very gray in some instincts. Obviously there is a concern that rises to the level of an investigation, then policies are followed, depending on, which department. Offboarding is just that. If we're notified of someone leaving, we conduct exit interviews where appropriate, payout of leave time where appropriate, process the paperwork for payroll, and we do all of this for everyone, mostly but the school. We do exit interviews for the school where appropriate. And then salary schedules are pretty self-explanatory. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
Does anyone have any questions?
Training. Do we handle training through the various department heads, or is there any way that we look at, in each of our departments, who has the capacity to maybe take on more responsibility, grow in the job, and get them additional training or cross-training on different parts of that department?
So Primex does an excellent job at training. They have a supervisor's academy that we do send employees to, and they do that about quarterly. When a new hire is onboarded, we do mandate certain trainings through the Primex website. So, for instance, slip, trip, and fall, or harassment, discrimination, code of ethics. So that's all through the onboarding process during orientation.
Just to follow up, there's also a lot of training that is done within departments depending on the nature of your job responsibility. So if you're at Public Works and using equipment, heavy equipment, there's a certain level. Obviously, PD has a whole series of trainings, and fire, and so.
So I guess in the departments where you don't handle all the pieces, it seems to me like you handle quite a bit in fire, but it's kind of mixed between schools and police and what you're handling or not handling. Do they have someone with that HR experience to handle some of these training efforts?
In the
policy?
police department, if it's a financial matter, we would work with Karen Senecal. If it is a personnel training matter, so new hire, we would work with their personnel and training secretary.
Okay.
So I would say that each department has that little branch, but not necessarily, I don't know what their background is.
Okay. And I guess, and do each departments, if there is a problem, do they have somebody who, I'm guessing they have somebody designated then, who handles it at a certain level, but then at some point it gets forwarded to HR?
Yes. Again, if it's not a grievance and doesn't go through that process, that's kind of that gray area that we try to work through. I would say people from every department come to HR with concerns. And then from there, we kind of involve those that need to be involved. But I would say, obviously, the police department have certain policies regarding concerns, and they probably handle those in-house. But if necessary, they would bring me in.
Okay. All right.
Does HR have any relationship with commissioners, volunteers, to the boards of the city?
I would say no. Currently, the only relationship we have would be sending them the volunteer handbook through Power DMS.
Okay. That's fair.
All right. Other questions? Okay. Great. Thank you. And thank you for putting all this information together for
course.
us. And
Absolutely.
It's kind of hard to track all of this
Yes.
from our perspective. It's hard to know what everyone does. So
Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to our agenda, and I think we should go ahead and go on to the second item that we have on the report back on legal authority and city charter interpretation.
Yep.
Okay.
So, as you'll recall from the conversation back in February in Governance Committee, there was a question raised in terms of the later amendments to the city charter related to IT and HR. And so, just as kind of setting the framework, the city charter does have multiple pieces to it. Portsmouth City Charter sets up a fire commission, sets up a police commission, and a school board. And so the school, police, and fire are our charter departments, as you've kind of heard probably ad nauseum in terms of this structure. And so that framework is the one which kind of creates some of these gray areas that we sometimes have, and this kind of balance of how we meet all of those requirements within the charter. And what we saw in 2000 is that there were two amendments that were adopted to the city charter. One related to IT and one related to human resources. And those two charter provisions, when you go back and you look at the actual report that was done by the committee that made the recommendations for those two charter provisions, said, look, we are looking for efficiencies and for, kind of think, leadership and those other opportunities that come when you have a municipal department that is maturing and growing up, HR and IT, and having those departments provide the leadership and the role outside, not I won't say outside, but more in coordination with the missions of the charter departments. So not changing the mission, in fact, if anything, respecting, honoring the mission, but simply providing another level of resource and leadership at the municipal level. Now, that was 2000, and I've sent the report to the committee members, and if you need me to go through in detail, I can. But I think the report's pretty clear about what the intention was. Now, at the time in 2000, I would say the municipal side of the government actually didn't have as robust of an HR department as we have now, nor did it have the type of IT department that we have now. So I would say we are finally getting to the point from the municipal side of the house where we have the kind of resources not to usurp control or authority, but really to look for those opportunities and really begin to look for those opportunities to kind of come out of the silo a little bit and to see where we can take advantage of kind of looking more globally across the organization, how we can help each other, how we can provide more leadership and training, how we can back each other up, how we can solve security problems, how we can implement new software, and that's what you're going to hear, a little bit shortly when I am quiet, and Nathan Lunny talks about, where we're going with our new financial and HR software in all likelihood. And so I think the changes that we have proposed to Chapter 1 in your administrative code are simply to kind of recognize a little better what we wanted to accomplish probably in 2000, but we didn't get there because, frankly, we did not have the resources on the municipal side to begin to look for opportunities and implement opportunities. As you heard, Ryan talk about, we've found a little bit of savings here and there as we look across, how much software we have and licensing options. And so it's going to be little bits and pieces, but you heard him say everyone's got a full plate of work. Mm-hmm. So it's less about the personnel, it's more how do we leverage what we've got, particularly as we go forward and look at opportunities, particularly if the school is going to be looking, for new software to accomplish more of the reporting that they'd like to do. I mean, those are the kind of things where you'd like to think that there are conversations happening to say, hey, have you seen anything? Have you been to any of the conferences? What trouble did you have implementing? Oh, your OpenGov procurement software. Is there something we can learn from that? And in fact, our OpenGov procurement software that I've been knee-deep in and helping to roll out touches every single department. Fire, police, school. That is like the perfect example. We've been working with Kenny Lynchy in the school department. I don't know, Karen, if we've grabbed you yet to work on something to push out, but I'm sure it'll be coming soon, given this time of year. And so that's the type of thing where you're just going to see more opportunities, I think, for us to take advantage of maybe a new technology and to get the most out of it, and it's across departments. So I'll leave it there because we're short on time, and just answer questions if you have them.
I just reiterate that opportunity. I was thinking in HR, Deputy Chief Maloney and all of our city departments, they all have people who interface with the public, and a central HR department could say, we want to give people training. You're all very mission focused. You all really want to deliver services really well. But how do you interact with customers? How do you do customer service, which is a big part of what we do? And there's ways to train people to learn to listen and learn to, understand what a customer is really wanting and how to deal with that. And training in leadership skills for some of our key supervisors, or team, how to work with teams and get the best out of them. All those are things that, it's a lot of work for managers who have lots of responsibilities to initiate that, but an HR department could look at the whole city and say, maybe there's some common training areas here, some development areas that we can, and it's really not costly. It's amazing how little training like that costs, but it pays off in dividends.
Yeah, I think you heard from Kelly Harper that we do a lot of training, or take advantage of the training that's available through Primex for our supervisors, and I'm certain, Kelly could speak more to that, but those are the kind of opportunities we are looking for as we kind of, I want to say, break down the silos a little bit and say, okay, how do we leverage the resources we have, the leadership we have, the common goals that we all have. Right. So, yeah.
I think it's very clear that on the HR side, we are much further down the road on HR integration than we are on IT, and frankly, it's because the city didn't have the resources that we have now in an IT department. So it's really helpful to kind of, I think of it in that framework, and that's kind of how I want to think about it is, the HR department has already kind of done a lot of this integration work that is just really supportive of the charter departments, because the last thing we want to do is step on anyone's toes. And trying to get IT to that same stage is kind of like, I think, where I'm thinking we're going, so that it's more supportive of what the charter department's needs are, and being able to identify those and find ways as a city that we can be more functional than we are now, I think. Does anyone have any other questions on this? If we can go ahead and ask our finance director to come forward and speak to the new financial and human resources software.
Happy to give you something exciting to think about. I would tell you first, Suzanne mentioned a couple moments ago the procurement solution that we've been working on. Procurement, given some of the changes that you folks made in ordinance to clean up and clarify our procurement standard, moving forward, this procurement solution helps us to streamline the creation and the approval processes to get bids, RFQs, RFPs, solicitations in general out to the public. So streamlining is important, but it also allows us to make consistent the language that we're using. So review by the legal department, indemnification, expectations, the rights reserved to the city in every one of these. That's really important. So we're streamlining it. We're making it a safer process for us. But the outreach is also outstanding. And one of the things that we're already finding is what they had promised effectively in the sales cycle, which was that using a platform like this from OpenGov is increasing the level of competition. There have been more eyes on, more participation in the solicitations already in the first couple of months since our implementation, and that fosters greater competition, and it saves us a nickel down the line. So that's what procurement is doing already. Now, we've only really used the portal side, which is the front end, because the majority of what we've been pushing to the portal over the last several weeks has been homegrown documents, PDFs that we just attach and push out there. But we have begun now to implement the fullness of the the solicitation building. And so the documents with boilerplate language that legal has reviewed and established are now growing within the tool. The pricing tables that are put together are grown within the tool, so that when the vendors participants can put their numbers in, the math gets proven out by the software, and the bid tabulation, for instance, is the press of a button. So we really appreciate that. While we've used that as a first pass to get excited, and staff have been great across the city. We've appreciated the enthusiasm that folks have shown. We put out an RFP and are looking at a new ERP for the finance office and human resources. Happy to update you that if I haven't already said this, we got 8 or 9 viable proposals. We boiled that down to 4 proposing firms that we hosted here in the city, and we had demonstrations. Currently, we're working through a handful of what we're calling deeper dives with one particular solution. That's the consensus solution, the winner for all, but we want to prove out that everything that we need it to do is actually capable of doing, so we don't miss anything. But we'll move to negotiations and contracting over the next 30 days, we anticipate. So what I can tell you is that in those deeper dives, there have been tears shed. There have been some mic drop moments. There's been some tears shed. There's been glee from the quiet room. One of the things that we anticipate is, and I'll just, in the interest of time, real quick, we anticipate that with this solution, we'll be able to overlay the school department on the municipal side in a single installation, as opposed to having separate data sets.
Wow.
There will be a need for some great coordination as we build out the chart of accounts to ensure that the local needs for decision making and detail and the state reporting requirements on both sides are met with the architecture of that chart of account. Your account number structure can be as long and as crazy as you want it to be, but really it's the tool by which we determine the level of detail that we collect, which empowers the assessment and analysis that we can do later. So given that we put a coordination to that, we recognize, though, that will drive some accounting efficiencies. There's some things every month right now, the city and the school together commit the better part of a week to reconciling the two data sets. That's something that we won't see as we move forward. When you add in the end of year reconciliation that we go through, both sides working to make sure we've got the same number, that on my side is collectively, I guess, I would say 20 to 25% of a body. And no expectation that we'd do without that body, but we do appreciate that that accountant could be better used, and that time could be committed to advancing us rather than just cleaning us up. So in processing invoices for payment, I spent some time in the world of software, and I'm really sensitive, because they were my customers, I'm really sensitive to the data entry people. And the move to Windows-based software was kind of awkward initially, because you went from tab, tab, click, click, tab, tab, click. You had to start mousing, and you were moving around, and people slowed down, and it wasted time. And so in the course of the deeper dive the other day, sitting right in this room, I was drilling on the keyboard. And finally, John, the very intelligent, well-experienced solutions advisor who was demoing, he stopped. And he turned and he addressed me directly, and he essentially said, as of June, there won't be any more data entry. And I said, what? And he said, for 2.5 years, our firm has implemented artificial intelligence on other platforms, and in June it comes to this platform. So by the time the city gets to implementing, invoices from our vendors will email to a particular address, and that address will be monitored by artificial intelligence, which will harvest from the invoice all of the relevant data, key that data in, and move it forward for the approval process. So your keystroke thing you're so worried about, Nathan, is irrelevant by the time you get to implementation. Now, this doesn't make the accounts payable clerks unimportant, but it certainly means that as we put our resources together, we can put more energy and more hours into the procurement and purchasing and the coordination for savings in buying the stuff that we need, and put less energy into the data entry and cutting of the checks. That was one of those mic drop moments. The citizens portal that they demonstrated, which is really an address initially to the water and sewer billing folks, it exploded into an online citizen portal that, if we set it up right, which will take some work, but if we set it up right, every interface that you might have financially with the city could be addressed in the citizen portal. So not only can you log in and see your water and sewer consumption and billing, like you might see your electric or your your gas from the utilities, but you could see your tax bill in there. You could see what's coming up with your automobile registration, et cetera. So right now, we don't look out and say, oh, wow, we can get rid of a lot of staff. But what we do look out and say is it's absolutely expected now that we will be able to do more in the area of analysis, cost review, cooperation and collaboration in terms of trying to find the most efficient way to get the job done. And doing so by blending the pool of our resources and the pool of our needs across all of the departments of the city, I think, is going to be something that we'll be able to tackle boldly as we work through what will not be a small nor short implementation process, but I think it's going to pay us some real dividends. So.
Wow.
Is this going to replace Invoice Cloud?
Shh, don't tell Invoice Cloud. I don't really know yet. I mean, until such time as we're there. One of the things that we heard, we had a lengthy meeting with the City of Concord and their finance office and related staff. They've just come through now the 5th year of implementation of this platform. Now, they have chosen not just to do the core implementation in the first couple of years, but over the following 3 years, they've implemented all of the ancillary systems, which one by one have replaced some other third-party tool that they were using. And they were pretty candid in saying, you will find that there are pros and cons, there are gives and takes. Some of the things you'll choose to replace, toss out a third party and do it internally with this application. We'll do some things better, but some things not as well, and you just have to make your choices. So I don't know for sure particularly. But yeah, the function in that citizen portal might absolutely compete with Invoice Cloud, so.
Well, that's good.
Well,
I'm not a big fan of Invoice.
not the best. Will we be able to generate reports rather than manually creating them in PowerPoint? I know right now that's what we're doing for some of our annual reporting.
Yeah, I mean, the tool, we haven't actually, one of the deep dives that we've done was to work on project and grant accounting. And it's not just project and grant accounting, it's tracking and reporting as well, which is going to take, it's a bit of a shift, the way that we manage that information. But we had a number of departments represented that were taking a peek at it, and there seemed to be enthusiasm all around. Core financials obviously will have greater opportunity for reporting. We probably have better reporting than you see today. We just don't necessarily know how to use it or never implement it effectively. And so the hope is that we keep ourselves in the game and we implement to the fullness and get the best we can. There are they as an application provider are more interested in providing us with the opportunity to analyze than I don't want to say than report, but it's more about what insight can be gained than how many numbers can you put on paper. So the printing, the outputting, I think it will be reasonable for our needs, but the excitement is in how they will slice and dice the data that we collect, given our chart of account structure and the amount of detail we gather. They will help us with that analysis so that maybe we get more information out of our data and our reports than we have.
Wonderful.
It's a big sales cycle. It's been exciting.
What's the timeline?
So the timeline just gets longer and longer the more we see the capacity for. Right now, we would hope to have a decision made and be moving through contracts by the end of the month of April. I don't know that I said this the other day in a meeting, and the city manager, I think, almost fell off her chair. I'm not sure we actually look at software and start getting deep into any training in 25, because I think part of what we want to do between now and the end of the year is map out our processes and have a process flow with the insight given by the experts with that application. To the extent that you could, as you get ready to start training, if all of us changed and all of them changed, the process we had mapped out would still stand, and that would be what we would implement. Because I want us to make sure going in we know what we're doing and why, and what the results should be as when we come out of it. Because I think, having seen some of this implementations that are rushed, they get data in and they get function going, but they never maximize the benefit of the application, and I want us to do that here. So I'm hoping that we would start our training over the holidays, maybe the first of the year, and maybe see the ledger convert over for July 1, the new fiscal year in 26. Maybe, I had said maybe payroll would follow on January 1st of 27. That's just pie in the sky, but, without having talked to the vendor about that plan, so.
Are there any other big integration opportunities? I mean, I assume it takes our billing systems and ports the revenue numbers and tracks the receivables and ports in the payroll, and any other areas that we're still doing a lot of manual.
One of the things that we'll do the end of next week, late next week maybe, is a deep dive into the payroll and the human resources suite all around, because we have an egg basket full of different input tools across the different departments to collect payroll data and move it forward for payroll. And as the HR director was reporting on just a little bit ago, we have a number of platforms in terms of addressing staffing. Our hope would be that we would find our way so that all of them are on a common platform. If this particular application, which seems to have some great strength in the finance realm and has made us excited, if it hopefully shows the same kind of robust functionality and opportunity on the HR side, great. If it doesn't, we're going to double down and see if we can't find the best out there to be able to gather up time information and leave information, but also to support evaluations and contract negotiations and all the like. So we, that's maybe the area where there's the greatest amount of manual work being done, because even in some of the integration we've done, there are still manual steps where the data comes in. Isn't that great? But then we got to manipulate it before it can really be ready for posting or for submission into the process. So we'd like to see some improvement across the board there.
Exciting.
It sounds like, the benefits could be great,
I hope so.
but I think the lesson learned too for us and the takeaway is that anything we're doing on IT integration or anything is going to take not months, it's years of planning and work between our IT department and the charter departments on anything that happens. It's not something that will happen next year, or maybe not even
Well,
the next 3 years.
You can get it right or right now, but you can't get both.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So I think that's really important. That's an important lesson for us to learn, because this is something we're doing just in one department that impacts all these other departments, and we're really aware of that now. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Jane is here if you want her to give you the quick update on encumbrances, or if you have other questions, or just move it off to the next meeting.
I want to make sure that if anybody wanted to add anything to this discussion and they felt like they couldn't, I would love to have them come up. Yes. Yeah.
Sure, I'll come
Yeah.
up with you.
Yeah.
There's 2 chairs over here.
Yeah, please come.
This seems to be where people will go. Thank you. Good afternoon now. Good afternoon.
Don't believe me, you got
Thank you for the opportunity. Mike Maloney, Deputy Chief with the Police Department. On behalf here of Chief Newport as well, who's currently out of town, but just asked that I pass on a few things. And
I'm Daisy Lavoie, the IT manager for the police department.
so, with respect to the proposed amendments to the charter language and the administrative code, there was a couple of things that the chief was just hoping to have an opportunity to respond to and perhaps ask some questions about in terms of, and Ryan had said it a couple of times when he spoke earlier about the uniqueness of the charter departments, in this case, the police department. So as they relate to HR and IT. I think the way the administrative code is written now, that it allows for the sharing of commonalities between HR and IT, but it also acknowledges that there's certain uniquenesses with the charter departments, including the police department. We have many unique computer programs, softwares, licenses, service agreements, CJIS requirements, federal reporting requirements. On the IT side is some of the things that make the police department unique in that sense. And then also on the HR side, we do share many commonalities with HR. We communicate with HR quite frequently with our new hires, and as Kelly mentioned about complaints, there are certain policies and procedures where if an employee of ours files a complaint with us, we're mandated to loop in HR. But there's also a lot of uniqueness to our hiring. And as Kelly explained on her matrix there, HR doesn't have a big role in the recruitment and the hiring of our personnel because of the uniqueness of our hiring process, which is a lot different than hiring processes in other city departments, including polygraphs and extensive background investigations. And, you know, when the chief or myself read a pre-employment packet before we interview an employee, it's a 3-ring binder and it's this thick. That's a hiring practice that's unique to the police department. So I think the chief's kind of question was, if we remove that term unique from HR and IT interactions with the police department and the city, what does that look like for our interactions with HR and IT? Does that mean that HR now does our hiring from A to Z? Does that mean they take over our recruitment and our application process. So I think this was just an opportunity for me to express our kind of questions moving forward as to specific related to the removal of the unique characteristics of the charter departments, in particular police, because I think that uniqueness is in there because we are unique, and I think it also gives us opportunity to share what's in common, but also, I know we don't use the term silo, but continue to do those unique things that we do as a department as they specifically relate to HR and IT. It's not a question, it's just a statement. It's a few words, it's public comment, call it what you will. And Daisy's here, our IT manager, if there's anything that I may have missed on the IT side of things as far as uniqueness. If there's anything you want to say, Daisy, that's perfectly fine, or?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was reviewing the amendment changes to information technology, and as being as the IT manager here for the police department, there's a lot of language that has been removed to make us unique. The language that was adding was that everything would shift to the chief information officer of the city is in charge with fulfilling priorities and vision of the leadership of the charter departments and to ensure the specific needs of the charter departments. Whereas before, it was more up to my division to make sure that we had everything that functioned by law or practice and that was unique and specific to the charter department. I kind of feel like if that language is removed, it may create some gray area or ambiguity. I can't talk today. And it would kind of, be a struggle to work with this chief information officer and then my division to figure out, what is best for us. And I hope that the CIO would always want to ensure the priorities and the vision of the police department and what our needs are. So it does cause worrisome to have some of that language removed. And did you have any questions?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate hearing from both of you, and I think that that's what we're trying to figure out what the language should look like to make sure we do respect the charter departments. And so that's what's critical for us to hear is, where you feel that your concerns are around this, because that's where we don't want to do anything that is going to, I guess, we say step on your toes as far as your role go. So I think that's critical.
Yeah, and I think this is certainly not indicative of the police department saying HR and IT, stay out of what we do. By no means whatsoever. And without question, if there's opportunities to better consolidate and better streamline processes within city departments, even charter departments, we're all on board. But at the same time, acknowledging or acknowledging the latitude to still retain those things that are unique to us is important. Just for us to mention because of the uniqueness of hiring a police officer or hiring a civilian employee. And we do the same background investigation we do on a civilian employee is the same background investigation we do on did I say civilian or police officer first? Whether we hire whether we hire a civilian or whether we hire a sworn officer, they get the same background investigation. And that's it's unique to our department. Not any other city department gets that same type of background investigation, and as is the IT thing. So I think that's where we're coming from, at least, where that uniqueness gives us the opportunity to retain those functions. And then if that uniqueness is removed, and the way I read it, it's basically that HR and IT do our hiring and manage all our IT. And if that's the case, what does that look like on a day-to-day level? with our department.
I think that we're trying to figure out how we can collaborate and not interfere, if you will.
Sure.
You know, so.
And I agree. I just think the language needs to be a little bit
Oh,
more
that's good.
clear, that's all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think for the next governance committee meeting, we can work to see if we can come up with some modifications to what we've initially floated that tries to kind of encapsulate and capture some of this, because I think you heard from both HR, from Kelly Harper and from Ryan Babcock, that there is great respect and understanding of the unique roles and responsibilities, special requirements under the law, both for school and for police and fire as well, frankly. And as you can see, we, HR and IT, work very closely with the fire department, even though they have obviously some very distinct and statutory obligations in how they respond. But it really is a question of, I think, easy enough to add some language that I think is going to respect that. But there is, I think, from a management perspective, we are looking for an evolution of how we work together, because we have these other pieces coming, like new financial software. So we're wanting to look ahead and make sure we set a framework where we don't have to come back here to a governance committee or city council. We want language that is going to live and frankly honors what the charter is looking for in terms of, those opportunities. But I don't think there's any hesitancy in reflecting some uniqueness, which is obvious and statutory, because we have it even amongst the municipal departments. The certain many, obligations and requirements for our CDL drivers and, on the public works side. So I think easy, I'll work on some language that we can bring back to the next committee, and if I can, I'll run it by you guys first, the charter departments, and see if it kind of eases some of the concern. But I don't want to mince words, that I think we do need to, as we look forward and evolve over time, that we are going to see opportunities to be sort of making sure we're all rowing in the same direction and taking advantage of the technology we have and opportunities in leadership. So,
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to.
I'll take
And
one more
really
minute
quick,
from
and
the
it's really quick. I
superintendent.
just
Yes.
want to, because we didn't specifically speak the language while we were sitting. I just would say, I think we have more, for us, we see more challenge in the IT language than we do in the HR language. The HR language talks about support. I think that allows a lot of flexibility for us to kind of go back and forth and kind of think about that. Where, we see the proposed IT language as potentially, when we talk about that city IT will be responsible for acquisition, maintenance, coordination, security, and regulatory compliance of everybody, and the language change from where it was before. I think we have some draft language that would be more about collaboration to find efficiencies, and I think you're kind of hinting at it, Councilor Cook, when you're talking about kind of where in the development process of where IT is at the moment, as opposed to where HR. It's been a longer road for HR to get to where they are. And while we evolve, I think we have concerns about creating language that is anticipatory of where we might be able to be, as opposed to what we're actually ready to implement today. And so we would have concerns about, our conversations with Ryan have been awesome, but we would have concerns about having an ordinance that says we are effectively giving over the ability to say no in all these arenas to a department that is growing towards being in a position to be able to do that effectively, but not necessarily in a position to do it efficiently with us at the moment. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we will work on some language changes for the next meeting that maybe reflect some of these concerns in our discussion today.
Yep.
I want to thank everyone who stuck with us through this whole discussion. I really appreciate it. It is very meaningful for us to hear from you and to hear all the input from the different departments and how this works and doesn't work, I think, over time. So with that said, I think that's
It's up
the
to you.
complete, that's our full discussion on IT. And that second item on the agenda is the Administrative Code, Chapter 1. that is part of this discussion, so that's what's coming back. We have someone here to report back on city council encumbrances. If everyone has does everyone have a little more time on the committee? Is everyone comfortable with that?
We can do a very brief report.
Okay.
Well, we have no
And-
April meeting, so.
And we won't go back to the other topic, so just so you all know, you don't have to linger, but
You're welcome to get lunch.
yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
This is much less complex and exciting than what you've just heard. But the city attorney and I met with Peter Rice, the director of public works, and Kelly Barnaby, the city clerk, to review the policies that we discussed last meeting. And as we talked about the 4 different policies and we talked generally about the ordinances, our conversation was obviously about streamlining and becoming more efficient. And the city attorney suggested that maybe we do not need council policies, but simply an ordinance that will live in Chapter 6, and that the fees would be referred to the fee committee on an ongoing basis, as well as the council having an opportunity to be, responsive prior to fee committee meetings to make those adjustments. And I'm thinking historically, when these policies were drafted for the city council, the purpose of policies is so that you could amend them quickly, right? All you need is one meeting, you can make these amendments. And really, when they first came out, in whatever year the policy was because something was new, right? Something came up, oh gosh, we've got to deal with these signs, we've got to deal with how much we charge when people are using the city's rights-of-way. But now those processes are pretty much routine. We don't have a lot of surprises anymore. So I think the need to respond quickly to a change has been met by the recent vote on being able to be, reactive to a particular fee without going through fee in the budget process, but also in condensing all of this, it may make sense just to make one ordinance on all the encumbrances and then refer to fee and perhaps not have a policy at all on encumbrances. So before we started a draft, at the city attorney's suggestion, we thought we would bring this to your attention so that you could give us guidance as to what you might like to see.
How does everyone feel about this? We've done this before. We just did this with the Public Art Review Committee. That we had a few policies, we had a few ordinances. We combined it all into an ordinance because it had been around for a while and it was unnecessary. This is a much bigger task, but still, I think that's the suggestion, is to combine everything.
And I think Jane may have mentioned it, and I didn't hear it, but I know she shared with me, now that you've changed the fee ordinance, you can adjust a fee outside of the budget cycle.
On the fly.
So that does give you a little bit more flexibility, because that was one of the areas where it's sort of inclined towards a policy to more quickly change that. But
So basically, everything but the fee structure would be in the ordinance?
Yes.
For all encumbrances.
Yes.
Oh, goodness.
Take them out of chapters 8 and 9 and 11 and put them all in chapter 6 in a new section that would, put all of those together and edit some that exist already through the city clerk in chapter 6, and then not have any policies. You would rescind the policies after you voted to approve the ordinance. And you've done that before. With outdoor dining, you did that. You adopted an ordinance, and then right after the adoption of the ordinance, you rescinded the policy because it was obsolete because you had the ordinance. So it's just a thought.
So we wouldn't be changing anything we're doing, we simply would codify it all in one place.
Correct. You'd move it around and put it in a different location.
And That way you don't have to, every time a new council comes in, you don't have to reaffirm that policy. And you've had the fees going through a process that you've set up that you want the fee committee to look at, or through your budget process, as opposed to one night in a meeting, somebody decides to change one fee just a little bit here or there. So.
I know I am personally a fan of this kind of restructuring. It's part of the reason I wanted to found the governance committee in the first place, because I find that a lot of the ordinances and policies, it can get confusing to the average person, because it's a lot in many different places. So I think the goal was to consolidate and make it simpler for everyone to understand.
Yeah, it's not just us, it's the public. You know, they have a lot of questions, and if we could just refer them to one place and to the fee structure that comes out of the fee committee, that would make our jobs easier too.
Yeah. I think it also is from a legal perspective, from a resident, to understand that the things that they're asking for is an encumbrance. People don't always understand, that is essentially what you're asking for when you're asking for all these various things. But since they're in different places, it's not really clear. So I think that's also helpful legal framework for everyone.
Yeah, I don't think people really consider, putting a chair on a sidewalk. They don't understand they're using city property, and there's a fee for that. So this would help make it clearer.
I think by putting this all in one place and in an ordinance, aside from the fees, gives it some legs to, it'll have a little more continuity, I think.
Hopefully, yeah, gives it a little more legal standing. That's, what you're thinking, because it's an ordinance and it's not subject to fluctuation by policy.
And I think the city attorney also mentioned in that discussion that we had with Peter Rice and Kelly too, we have been discussing broadly enforcement in general in the legal department, and we would be able to bake in some enforcement, so that people have a clear understanding of what that looks like we did with the outdoor dining. If you don't remove your such and such by whatever, there is this fee associated, or the city can take the property and that sort of thing. So we might be able to bake a little of that in as well. Jason is wonderful, but he may not be here for the next 10 years, so it might be nice to, though he might be, but it might be nice to just kind of codify sort of what might happen and deadlines and that sort of thing.
I think that's very helpful, because enforcement is challenging.
It is.
And so when it's also clear to everyone who's applying what the enforcement mechanism is, then they know exactly what they're agreeing to.
And I think if this passes, then we can work with our folks, Monty, to kind of help explain and maybe have a web page or links to a particular web page that help the public navigate. Yes, the ordinance will be one places, but the permits are still in different departments, and so to have a roadmap maybe that gives a one-stop shop that tells everybody where they can go to get what they need might be, if this type of thing passes, might be a helpful tool for the public.
That's wonderful. This is one of those areas where I have this personal fantasy that we have a software package that one day where we have our ordinances available online, and you can click inside the ordinance to the application. So
With a hot link, yeah.
yeah, I dream of this. So that's maybe our next software or just to talk about. But okay.
Yeah, and it has raised other conversations that we're having with inspections and health and other departments about overall code enforcement, and rewriting of the ordinances and a whole code enforcement process. And so when we talked about the encumbrances, we thought, oh, yes, we should have code enforcement in the encumbrance ordinance as well. So.
Okay. So is everyone good with proceeding in at least that direction? One ordinance direction?
I think so. I was just going to ask, outdoor dining aside, which is the big exception, did we change our encumbrance policies much over time? Or were they pretty static?
I think the fees may have changed, but I think what's codified in there's cross-reference. It's like a generic sentence in an ordinance, but then the policy has a little more detail. Much of the detail in the policies is outdated and redundant, I think. But what we encumber and what we charge for, I don't think has changed since the inception of the policies.
Okay, so that makes sense that it should be an ordinance, and the fee committee deals with the variances in the fee every year. And it's all in one place.
I think it's good.
If everyone's comfortable with that, I think then we'll let legal proceed in that direction. All right, great.
Bring back something for you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for sticking out the time with us. We don't have any other business. Just a reminder, I don't think we have anything on the schedule, if I'm right, for
Another meeting?
for April.
Right.
We don't have anything on the schedule, so our next meeting is in May. I want to make sure, I think there's potentially someone for public comment. I didn't know, maybe not. I don't think we have anyone in the room.
There's just James.
I know, is there any public comment? No?
So I'm going to.
Okay, with no public comment then, I have no announcements besides the fact that there again, no meeting in April. So we have a little bit of time for all of this, to work through all of this. Our next meeting would be in May, and that would be scheduled, I think, for May the 5th, and I'm sorry about city councils that day as well. How does everyone feel about
the 12th?
or the
originally.
12th?
Yeah.
The 12th then. We can do the 12th and
But we have city council budget that night.
yeah, so the challenge in May is once we hit May, we all of a sudden have a lot of city council.
Yeah,
So, yes, I think we have it scheduled for the 12th.
yeah.
The challenge then is also the Memorial Day if we're going to meet a second time in May. So we end up meeting on the Tuesday, the 27th, instead of the 26th of May.
Okay, is that Memorial Day? No, it's the following weekend, isn't it?
26.
The 26th is Memorial Day, so we would
Oh,
be
it is,
meeting the
yeah.
27th instead. I don't know. I think I can see this going either way, whatever you prefer.
So the 12th and the
We could-
Tuesday, the 27th?
27th potentially, or we could do the 5th if you prefer. I should note, the general budget is on the 12th, the evening of the 12th.
You know, and regular city council meeting on the 5th.
Right. Right. So we have enough to talk about that's different subject matter too, that we could also meet the 12th and the 19th instead, if we prefer that. Again, there's city council that night, so. There's a lot in May, so it's
Yeah.
hard as far as conflicts.
That's full-on budget.
Yeah. Yeah, so, do you have a preference? Is everyone good with the 12th?
I'm good with the 12th.
I'm good with the 12th.
Okay, so let's just make sure we meet the 12th. And then let's revisit whether or not we need to meet again on the 27th, because I hate to move it to a Tuesday without the assistant mayor here, so.
What I can do is I can put a hold on the room for the 27th, assuming it's not already taken, and then we can finalize.
Okay, sounds great.
Yeah, I think I'd prefer the 27th to the 5th.
Okay, that's what I wanted to check.
Yeah.
I wanted to see what preferences there were, because it's, it's not easy in a month when you have so much city council, and it's asking a lot, so.
Yeah.
All right, with that said, could I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All right, all in favor? Aye. Thank you all for.